Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are going to do few characteristics of developing countries. All of you must know that we hear these terms quite often. More developed countries, which are called MDCs, or less developed countries, which are called LDCs. We sometimes also hear underdeveloped countries called UDCs. Now, this type of broad regionalization scheme is overly simplistic, but it is commonly used and it is quite useful at times. Sometimes you may hear the terms developed countries, industrialized countries, first world countries, rich countries, northern countries, industrially advanced countries. All these terms refer to more developed countries. And sometime for less developed countries, terms are also used, such as underdeveloped countries, agricultural countries, third world countries or third world nations, poor countries, the southern countries, or the south simply, less industrialized countries. But we have to remember that this is just a division to make things simple. Each and every country is actually at some stage of development. So but these terms kind of help us. Another thing that might come to your mind is that if we have first world nations and third world nations, where did the second world go? Basically, the second world used to be the command economy or the communist countries, like Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, China, North Korea, Cuba, Vietnam, and a few others. With the collapse of communism in most of these countries, the second world no longer exists. So broadly, we have now developing countries and developed countries. Okay, so now let's have a look at their characteristics. Here I have given a list of few characteristics that I've compiled, and I'll discuss them briefly one by one. Coming to the first one. Now, the developing countries, what is the first thing we notice about them is that there is general poverty and low living standards in those countries. Now, if you start from this point, now what happens actually in these countries is people earn less, and they spend most of their income on food. Still, they are underfed, and if they spend most of their income on food, this means they are not getting the other necessities of life. And other necessities of life includes good health conditions, good housing conditions, access to education. But since they are poor and they spend most of their income on food, they miss out on all these points. They have poor health conditions, their housing situation is very inadequate, and they generally either have lack of education or do not have access to education. Now over here I have given you per capita GDP of Pakistan, which is rupees $1357, you can say. Whereas as compared to USA, it is 65,280. I hope I'm saying it right in figures. Now these are the figures of 2019. Now what do we mean by this figure? Actually, if you want to see whether a country is poor or not, whether people are enjoying good standard of living, you usually look at indicators, and per capita GDP is one of those indicators which show the general living standards of the people. So here you two figures are provided to you, one of USA and one of Pakistan, just for the purpose of comparison, to see how much an average a person is earning in Pakistan compared to the one living in USA. And you can see the figure of USA is quite large. It's a big amount, 65280. So this means they are not generally poor and they are enjoying better standards of living there. Now over here I have given you some figures related to the world. Now out of 736 million people, with 8.6% of the world population live on $1.9 a day or even less. Now this is a statistic which shows the situation in the world, that almost 8.6% people in the world are living in general poverty, and their living standards are very low. How can we say that their per day earning is almost $2 or even less than that? Now that is a very small amount. Okay, so when you are writing this point in your exams, you can give the heading general poverty and low living standard, and then you can include all these points that I have given in this diagram, and just compile them in the form of sentences, and that would be enough. I have followed the similar method in next slides. Now second point is that developing countries usually have a rapidly rising population. Okay, their population multiplies very quickly. People are more and more children are being born. This is what it means. Now what happens is that such developing countries, they consume major part of their income, and very little is left for investment. And this is just a startup line, that basically this is what is happening in developing countries, that the government uses most of its income, and they are left with little amount to spend, to invest, and that can be in human capital as well as other areas. Now what happens is that people are uneducated, and they marry early. If you see keep Asian countries in your mind, and the number of children per couple is at least 4 to 6, or it can be even more higher than that. So birth rate is high. Now how do we know the situation in Pakistan? Pakistan is the fifth largest country in the world, the fifth most populous country in the world, and in 2009 it had a population of 219 million. This means that its population since independence has multiplied. I think this makes 5-6 times it has multiplied. Now when you have more children in a family, it's obvious that the number of dependents in a country will be more, which means number of children will be more. They are called dependents because they cannot earn for themselves, so they remain dependent on their parents, so the younger population is more. Over here you can find out what is the dependent percentage in Pakistan. I have not added few figures in these slides purposely, because I need you to look up for them. Okay, I have added few, but you need to find others yourself. Now life expectancy of young children is low. Now this is very obvious. Now these 2 points are related with each other. Okay, now when a woman is giving birth to a child every year, it is highly unlikely that the children are going to survive, since their living conditions are poor. So most of the children die before they reach age 5. That is because of poor health conditions, poor medical facilities, or just by malnutrition, just because the parents are not able to feed them properly, give them medicines on time. So the life expectancy of children remains low in developing countries. Now let's move on to the next point. The next point is that in developing countries, natural resources are underutilized. Now look, one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to the entire world is the blessing of natural resources. Some countries are rich in mineral resources, some are rich with water resources, others are rich with cultivable land. But the fact is that developing countries like Pakistan, they are not at all resource deficient. We have plenty of resources, but most of the resources remain unutilized or underutilized. Now, what do I mean by underutilized? Underutilized means that they are not used up to their full capacity, or full potential benefit is not drawn from resources. Like for example, I've written it in over here that Pakistan's whole cultivable land, mineral wealth and water resources are not under full utilization. Allah has given us cultivable land, loads of minerals, but many of these resources remain unused. We are not taking maximum benefit out of these. Okay, next point is that in developing countries there is shortage of capital. I should better start from this point here. You know, first of all, you must know what is capital. Capital is anything that helps you in the production of goods and services. It can be a machine, it can be a tool, money is also capital. So we have, it can be buildings also, roads, bridges, these are all types of capital. Now in developing countries we have shortage of capital. Why? This is the reason that these developing countries, since they consume most of their national income, they are not able to make enough savings, and that's why they are unable to invest. Obviously investment is done in agricultural sector or industrial sector or other sectors of the economy. If there is no investment being carried out, shortage of capital is bound to remain. Now shortage of capital means that the number of vehicles, number of buildings, roads and machinery per head in such countries is small. People do not use much machines. Okay, now since you have access to all these things is little, this leads to this point that their production or productivity of labor remains low. Imagine a person who does not have enough or the right tools and the right machines to work with. Obviously his level of production will remain low. Now when level of production is low, what happens, and or you are shortage of money to invest, this thing comes up. What is this? That you can't make use of modern techniques of production. The modern techniques of production require money. So if there is shortage of money in the form of investment, then modern techniques of production are not used and your productivity per person remains low. Now over here I have given you that how much Pakistan is saving. It is generally said that countries must save 20% of, at least 20% of their income if they want to accumulate capital in their country. But Pakistan's gross saving rate is 8.4% in according to the figures of June 2020, that is quite recently. 8.4% is less than 10%, so it's not a good figure in the sense that we will not be able to accumulate enough capital. Now over here I have given you that the highest gross saving rate that Pakistan achieved all time was 17.4% in 2004. Now obviously it was 17.4%. It depends upon the political situation at that time, but just to tell you that we have reached once close to 20%. That was in 2004, but we are saving very little now, that is 8.4%. Now, you, in order to give more weightage to your answer, you can also add in figures for USA or Japan, or if you want to for comparative analysis, you can also give figures for India and Bangladesh or other Asian countries, if you want to compare countries within our own region, Asia. Or you can just simply compare it with some developed nations. That will give your answer will become very, very attractive with these figures. Now, in this is a simple point, that in developing countries there is unbalanced industrial growth. Now, what is unbalanced industrial growth? When we want to accumulate capital, we need to build what should I say, we need to have factories that create okay, let me change my sentence. Unbalanced industrial growth means that more investment is done in consumer goods than in capital goods. What I wanted to say earlier was that if you want to put your country on the track of speedy development, you need more investment in capitalistic goods. Okay, like big machinery has to be produced within your own country in order to install or establish industries. All the big in machinery that is installed in the industries is mostly imported. So what happens in developing countries is that, since establishing industries or investment in capital goods, I should say, is very costly, general public cannot do that. If I want to set up a factory which is going to make railway engines, I cannot do that, because I, in my personal capacity, do not have enough money. It has to be done by the government. So if government is left with little saving, and they are not establishing such industries, more investment from the private sector is going to come in consumer goods, because that needs little finance. And the results are also speedy. When we have consumer goods industries established, you earn money more quickly. Okay, so more investment is being done in consumer goods than in capital goods. But what happens as a result, that all this thing slows down the process of development. So basically this point means all the investment is going in few industries. It is not diversified, and definitely it is not, investment is not going into capital goods. Now, before coming to this is the next point that I should be discussing, unemployment. But before coming to this point, you should know what are different types of unemployment. That's why I have given these few types. Unemployment simply means that a person who wants to do a job, but he is unable to find one. Okay. Now, what is demand deficient unemployment? Now, this is the biggest cause of unemployment, and it happens in times of recession. When there is reduction in demand of companies' products or services, they will most likely cut back on their production, making it unnecessary to retain a wide force work within the organization. भाई सिंपल सी बात है कि आप किसी भी इंडस्ट्री में रिसेशंस के टाइम में जब आपकी प्रोडक्ट्स की, कमोडिटीज़ की डिमांड गिर जाती है, तो आप उस चीज़ के लिए अपना सेम नंबर ऑफ़ वर्क फोर्स मेंटेन नहीं कर सकते। चीज़ें आपकी बिक नहीं रही होती और आपको लोगों को तनख्वाहें और वो सारा ख़र्चा करना पड़ता है। तो आप क्या करते हैं, सबसे पहले आप अपने नंबर ऑफ़ वर्कर्स को कट डाउन करते हैं। ठीक है, दैट इज़ कॉल्ड डिमांड डेफिशिएंट अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट. Now, second one is frictional unemployment. Now, it refers to workers who are in between jobs. An example is a worker who recently quit or was fired and is looking for a job in an economy that is oh my, where did I miss it? That is not experiencing a recession. It is not an unhealthy thing because it is usually caused by workers looking for a job that is most suitable to their skills. तो फ्रिक्शनल अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट क्या होती है कि आपने एक जॉब से क्विट कर दिया और आप दूसरी जॉब को ढूंढ रहे हैं, तो उस टाइप की बेरोज़गारी को आप फ्रिक्शनल अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट कहते हैं. ये अनहेल्दी तो नहीं है क्योंकि लोग इसको क्योंकि लोग यूजुअली एक जॉब से दूसरी जॉब पर स्विच करते हैं इन सर्च ऑफ बेटर अमाउंट ऑफ मनी. Now the third one is structural unemployment. Now it happens when the skills set of a worker does not match the skills demands of the jobs available, or if the worker cannot read the geographical location of a job. An example is a teaching job that requires relocation to China, but the worker cannot secure a work visa due to certain visa restrictions. अब structural employment क्या है कि या तो आपके skills आपकी job requirement से meet ना करें, ठीक है, और दूसरा ये है कि आप किसी भी वजह से उस लोकेशन पे ना पहुंच सकें जहाँ पर आपको जॉब मिल रही है. लाइक सपोज इफ़ आई गेट अ जॉब समवेयर and I'm not unable to get a visa to that place, I will still be unemployed, but that unemployment will be called structural unemployment. Now another type of unemployment is called voluntary unemployment. This is simple enough. It happens when a worker decides to leave a job because it is no longer financially fulfilling. An example is a worker whose take home pay is less than his or her cost of living. सीधी बात है भाई कि अगर आपकी ख़र्चा ज़्यादा है और आपकी आमदनी कम है और आप उस जॉब को छोड़ देते हैं अपनी मर्ज़ी से, तो उस टाइप की अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट को हम वॉलंटरी अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट कहते हैं, ठीक है. नेक्स्ट है आपकी हिडन और डिस्गाइज्ड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट. चले इससे पहले मैं आई वुड गो थ्रू अंडर एम्प्लॉयमेंट कि अंडर एम्प्लॉयमेंट क्या होती है. इट इंक्लूड्स हाईली स्किल्ड पीपल हु आर वर्किंग इन लो प्लेइंग जॉब्स. Part-time workers who would like to work full-time also form part of the underemployment total. Hidden employment includes underemployment. It's also simple enough. आपकी qualifications ज़्यादा हो लेकिन आप मजबूरी से लो पेइंग जॉब्स कर रहे हों. आप let me give you an example that if you are a doctor, you are unable to find a job in any of the hospitals or clinics and you are forced to work as a sales boy or a salesman in a shop. That is an example of underemployment, ठीक है. और underemployment hidden employment भी कहलाती है, ठीक है. ये जो आखिरी लाइन लिखी हुई है ना, the hidden employment includes underemployment. Now come to this one, hidden or disguised unemployment. It refers to people who are jobless but official unemployment figures do not include them. The term also includes people who are underemployed. Official unemployment figures often only include people with no job but who are actively seeking work. अब हिडन या डिस्गाइज्ड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट वो होती है जो ऑफिशियली जो लोग अंडर एम्प्लॉयड होते हैं. देखो, अब एक डॉक्टर अगर कहीं पे सेल्समैन की जॉब कर रहा है, बात तो वही हुई ना कि वो बंदा अंडर एम्प्लॉयड है, लेकिन फिगर्स में वो अनएम्प्लॉयड फिगर्स में वो एम्प्लॉयड आ जाएगा क्योंकि वो बेसिकली काम कर रहा है. ये तो शख्स को ही पता है ना कि वो अंडर एम्प्लॉयमेंट कर रहा है, अपने कैलिबर से कम लेवल की जॉब कर रहा है. तो जो आपके ऑफिशियल फिगर्स होते हैं ना, उसमें तो हम उस फारिग बंदा जो बिल्कुल ही कोई काम ना कर रहा हो और काम ढूंढ रहा हो, उसको हम अनएम्प्लॉयड कहते हैं. तो डिस्गाइज्ड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट या हिडन अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट या अंडर एम्प्लॉयमेंट ये शुमार ही नहीं होती आपके ऑफिशियल फिगर्स में, लेकिन टेक्निकली ये लोग अनएम्प्लॉयड ही होते हैं क्योंकि ये अपने कैलिबर से कम काम कर रहे होते हैं. ओके, नाउ come to the next point. Now we were discussing the characteristics of developing countries. तो अब developing countries में आ गया unemployment. Developing countries, one of their highlights is that there is much unemployment in that country. Now, the why is there much unemployment? Because there are fast growing populations and their economic development is slow. Government is not able to save enough to invest enough, so not enough jobs are created, so many people remain unemployed. Okay, and now you know that unemployment can be of different types, all the types that I described in previous two slides. uh, the basic type. So all those. Now I have given here a link to Pakistan Bureau of Statistics report of 2018. It shows employment trends. If you look up in the net, over the net, you will be able to find relatively fresher report, maybe of 2019. So you can follow this link and do have a look at it, so you can see how these Bureau of Statistics they compile all the figures of unemployment and all the figures related to employment situation in Pakistan. Now over here I have given you the labor force participation rate in 2017-18 is 52.57%. Okay, who were all the people who were willing to work, their participation rate was 52.57. But this is the figure of 2017-18. You might be able to find a newer one. Now unemployment rate in 2019 remained 4.45% in 2019. So whenever you are discussing these points, it's always good to make your explanation valid enough and add up these figures. Now next point is unfavorable balance of payment and foreign debt. So developing countries have unfavorable balance of payment. What is balance of payment? Balance of payment is an account of their export and export earnings. Okay, and unfavorable balance of payment means they are running into deficit. Running into deficit, in other words, you can say that their exports are more than their imports are more than their exports. And when you have a deficit, it leads to foreign debt. So let's see what happens. That most underdeveloped UDCs, which means underdeveloped countries, have less exports, and their exports are of poor quality. And when they are of poor quality, they face tough competition and they are not able to grab a good enough international market. That's why their exports remain low. And their major exports are semi manufactured goods and agro based primary products. Since developing countries are mostly agricultural countries, remember in the beginning I told you that these are called agricultural countries also. So they, all they are producing is agricultural products. So this is what their exports comprise of. They export raw material, agro based raw material, and if they are exporting some manufactured goods based on agriculture, they are not fully manufactured, they are semi manufactured. So whether it is a primary product or semi manufactured, they both catch low level prices in the international market. Now on one hand they are exporting semi manufactured goods and primary products, but on the other hand they import manufactured goods. Remember I told you in one of the previous slides that we in developing countries try to establish in heavy industries, but they do not have the capital, the machinery to to be utilized in that industry, so they end up importing them. So this adds up to their import bill. They are selling products which are earning less, but they are importing products that are costing a lot. So this is what disturbs their balance of payments. Now next I have given you that how much Pakistan's current account deficit is. It is 282 million according to the figures of June 2020. And what is the gross external debt that we have? 106.3 billion in 2019. Okay, so this is what the current situation of Pakistan is. This is the figure of 2019. You can find a fresher figure. Now in developing countries, what is mostly seen, that everywhere we see inefficient and corrupt administration. Now inefficient means they are not able to do their work to the 100%. Corrupt means they are misusing funds, they are misusing their authority. Now basically, remember we said in the very first slide that in developing countries people do not have enough to enjoy the necessities of life. They have barely enough to feed. The fewer people who get to a higher position, they enjoy those positions and they enjoy the ignorance of the masses. They misguide people about small things and they take bribes and they indulge themselves into corruption. आपको थोड़ी बहुत बातें पता हों और आप किसी सरकारी काम का किसी गरीब इंसान को ना पता हो, आप उसको 100 तरीक़ों से धोखे दे के 10 रुपए का काम आप उससे 10,000 में करवा लें, उस गरीब को तो पता नहीं चलेगा, बिकॉज ही इज़ इग्नोरेंट. ओके, तो लोगों की इग्नोरेंस, लोगों की का कम तालीम याफ्ता होना, जो थोड़े लोग अच्छी पोजीशनों पे पहुंच जाते हैं उनको हेल्प कर देता है कि वो करप्ट रास्ता अपनाएं. सीधे सीधे कामों के लिए भी लोगों से वो रिश्वत लेते रहते हैं. ठीक है. अब सेकंड पॉइंट इज़ लेस इम्पॉर्टेंस इज़ गिवन टू मेरिट. अब जहाँ पर आपका पूरा सिस्टम ही करप्ट हो एक्सक्यूज़ मी, तो वहाँ पर मेरिट को कम ही इम्पोर्टेंस दी जाती है. मेरिट पर सिलेक्शन नहीं होती, मेरिट पे काम नहीं होता, क्योंकि आपको कोई चेक करने वाला नहीं है ना, अंधा कानून चल रहा होता है, तो वहाँ पे मेरिट को कम इम्पोर्टेंस दी जाती है. Next we have nepotism. What is nepotism? Nepotism is a term which is used that when you get to a certain position, you use that position to favor your friends and family. इसकी सिंपल एग्जांपल मैं आपको दूं कि आप किसी ऊंचे ओहदे में आप भर्ती हो जाएं, तो आप अपने दोस्तों को और अपने रिश्तेदारों को वहाँ पे फेवर करके वहाँ पे भर्ती करना शुरू कर दें. सो दिस इज़ व्हाट इज़ नेपोटिज्म. तो ये तो आप देख सकते हैं कि डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज़ में this is very common. Okay, then we have red tapeism. Red tapeism is a term which is used for situations when you have some legal work is delayed for petty reasons. That is called red tapeism. आपका सिंपल सा काम हो लेकिन वो डिले करता चला जाए, उस पर टाइम लोग लगाएं, जिसको यहाँ की बड़ी लोकल लैंग्वेज में हम कहते हैं फाइल दबा देना. सीधी से काम में आपको इतना अच्छे दफ्तरों के चक्कर लगवाएंगे ना, तो दैट इज़ कॉल्ड रेड टेपिज्म. तो ये करप्शन का तरीका होता है ना, जब तक आपको वो दफ्तरों के चक्कर नहीं लगाते हैं, बंदा मजबूर नहीं होता, उन्हें कहता है कि भाई पैसे ले लो, काम हमारा कर दो. ठीक है, तो ये एक तरीका है दिस इज़ कॉल्ड रेड टेपिज्म. Now when there is nepotism, red tapeism, and there is less merit, what happens? Duty becomes less important compared to personal gains. You kind of morally become corrupt as well. You forget altogether what is your duty, and you just go to your office just to earn personal benefit or personal gains of money or positions or favors. Now next is shortage of social overhead capital. Now developing countries have shortage of infrastructure in the form of railways, roads, drainage system, electricity supply, etc. Of course, when you are not able to save enough, you will not be able to invest enough in all these things. That's why this infrastructure remains small. Now over here I can show you that in budget of year 2020, rupees 792 billion are set aside for development purposes in Pakistan. Now that is a separate debatable topic, whether this much rupees is good enough, or it should be increased, should be decreased. But just to tell you that this much amount has been set aside in the most recent budget for development purposes, or in order to create such infrastructure. Then developing countries are excessively dependent on agriculture. Okay, I have repeated this point twice, I think, before. But what happens, what are other things happening? One, they are excessively dependent on agriculture, but population is growing faster and labor land ratio is high. Okay, population is growing faster and the labor land ratio is high. This means that there are more people available to work on a smaller piece of land, and the small land holdings are not suitable for mechanized farming, since the inheritance of land from one family to other leads to creation of smaller and smaller farming, and mechanized farming needs a suitable size. So small land holdings make it impossible to make use of mechanized farming, which in turn gives them low productivity per worker, since they are not using proper machines, or the land size is small, so the productivity is small. Now next is that in developing countries, people are generally illiterate and economically backward. Okay, or they are have facing economic backwardness. Now how, these points that I've shown you, in all these, if you are living in one of the Asian countries, you will observe them quite often. Okay, we can see, if I speak of my country, Pakistan, I can see that labor efficiency is very little, and their lack of specialization is very trivial. They are not efficient enough, they do not work to their full potential. Why? Basically because they are not educated enough. Secondly, they do not have good capital to work with, so their efficiency remains low. Okay, then it's a matter of common observation that in such societies, people don't like to do experiments. They like to stick to the profession of their parents. Doctor ka beta doctor, engineer ka beta engineer kind of attitude prevails in that, because they feel secure in that kind of system. Generally, people are conservative and tradition bound and superstitious. Okay, people do not like women to come forward, or the situation in Pakistan is changing, alhamdulillah, but still there is a large number of people who need to change their thinking as far as working of women is concerned. But people are generally conservative, they follow their traditions, and they are superstitious when it comes to working in different fields. And you can see that there is widespread child labor in such countries, since the number of children per family is large. So children become their economic engines. As soon as they become 5-6 year old, either they are forced to beg, or they are made to do some kind of work to earn money. Now in developing countries, we often see that government jobs are considered very prestigious. Okay, people even prefer low paying government jobs as compared to highly paid private jobs. This is because they feel secure in government jobs. So this attitude prevails in developing countries. Or generally, what is the attitude of the people? People love to waste their time, and they are not time conscious. They love to waste their money and energy on things which according to them are prestigious. Okay, they spend all their time and energy on things which are not actually worth spending all these things, but they do that. because it's in their mind. They have made certain things or certain things related to status symbol important, so they spend all their energies on that. They do not educate themselves enough, they do not acquire enough knowledge, they just waste their time and energy. Then usually, I think this is my last point, that in developing countries we see social and political tensions and there is general unrest. Sometimes this unrest is related to related to electricity, related to supply of electricity, supply of gas, supply of wheat, supply of sugar. Okay, one or the other, some kind of unrest is prevailing in that country. uh, then another thing that we tension that people see, that everything becomes commercialized. People, in the quest of earning more and more money, they kind of forget all the moral values. They do not stick to those traditional good moral values, and social relations weaken. Okay, or in simple words I can say that earning money becomes more important than your moral values and than your social relations. This is all the drawback of commercialization. uh, then next one is that the views of young and the old generation differ. Of course, when older generation used to do things quite the right way, but the younger generation is they are just trying to earn or make quick money, so they leave behind all the moral values or social values. So this is where their views of the younger and the older generation starts differentiating. So such kind of tensions, which includes these are all social tensions. Okay, they prevail in developing countries. As far as political tensions are concerned, one government tries to pull the leg of the other, or the opposition tries to pull the leg of the government, which is in the current government. These political tensions, or the you can say that when people ये आई एम रियली शॉर्ट ऑफ वर्ड्स फॉर हेयर पॉलिटिकल टेंशन्स, आपकी ये जो धरने वगैरह हो जाते हैं, स्ट्राइक्स वगैरह हो जाती हैं, इल्ज़ाम तराशियाँ होती हैं, इन सब से, इन पॉलिटिकल टेंशन्स से आपके जैसे हमारे मुल्क में अब नैब ने जो है वो बहुत ज़्यादा कार्रवाइयाँ करनी शुरू की हैं। तो एक पार्टी दूसरी पार्टी पे इल्ज़ाम लगाती रहती है, तो टेक्निकली ये पॉलिटिकल टेंशन ही है ना जो क्रिएट हो जाती है। तो आपकी डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज़ में इस टाइप की पॉलिटिकल टेंशन्स बहुत ज़्यादा होती हैं। ठीक है, सिर्फ पॉलिटिकल टेंशन्स कंट्री के अंदर भी हो सकती हैं, और पॉलिटिकल टेंशन्स कैन बी विद सम अदर कंट्री। आपकी ऑन द बॉर्डर भी सिचुएशंस भी हो सकती हैं, आपकी ट्रेड से रिलेटेड पॉलिटिकल टेंशन्स भी हो सकती हैं, और एट्सेट्रा एट्सेट्रा। सो दे आपकी डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज़ में ये दोनों चीज़ें प्रिवेल करती हैं, सोशल टेंशन्स भी और पॉलिटिकल टेंशन्स भी। And that's about it. I hope whatever I said was helpful. Thanks for watching.